Growing up, my sister Rachel was the center of everything. She had it all: brains, beauty, and this natural confidence that drew people in. Straight A's? Every time. Competitions? She walked away with trophies like it was nothing. Dad couldn't go 5 minutes without talking her up to someone. She was always in the limelight. And me? I was more like the kid hanging out in the shadows with a book in hand. Quiet. Easy to miss. Nobody expected much from me, especially not Dad. He built his company, Everstead Group, from the ground up, and he made it clear Rachel was the one meant to carry on the legacy. Me? He never really knew what to make of me. Said I was soft, lacked ambition. I wasn't like Rachel. I didn't chase praise or care about standing out. I liked numbers. I liked peace and quiet. The only one who ever truly got me was Mom. She had this calm way of making you feel important just by sitting next to you. She used to tell me I saw the world differently, that being quiet and thoughtful wasn't a bad thing. She understood me in a way nobody else did. But when she passed away, it all fell apart. The house stopped feeling like home. Rachel shined even brighter, and I faded more into the background. After I graduated, Dad didn't give me a choice. He shoved a job in accounting at Everstead into my hands and told me to show up. No discussion. That was it. I didn't want it, but I went anyway. Figured I'd just keep my head down and get through it. But once I started going through the books, something didn't sit right. A few numbers stood out. Nothing huge, just small things that felt off. The kind of stuff only someone really paying attention would notice. So I pulled it all together into a report and brought it to Dad. He gave it a quick glance and brushed me off. Told me to stay in my lane. Said I wasn't in any kind of position to be asking questions. That one stung. I was trying to help, and he basically told me to keep quiet. That night, I sat in my car outside the office for what felt like hours, just staring out the window. That's when it hit me. No one in that building would ever take me seriously. Not as Caleb Morgan. I was just the other kid. So I made a decision that, honestly, felt a little insane. I created a whole new identity, called myself James Whitaker. Got fake documents, made up a background. Then I applied for a janitor position at Everstead. And I got the job. Yeah, you heard that right. I became a janitor at my own father's company. By day, I sat in accounting. By night, I slipped into a jumpsuit and cleaned the very same hallways. Nobody noticed. Nobody questioned it. As strange as it was, it actually felt kind of liberating. As the janitor, I had full access to every corner of that building. People talked openly around me like I was invisible. And I listened. I watched. I paid attention. For 8 years, I lived this strange double life. During that time, I earned my degree on the side and soaked up everything I could, not just about the company, but about leadership, about how people work, about what really makes a business tick. And Rachel? Man, she was everywhere. Magazine covers, speaking gigs, jetting across the globe like some business rock star. To the world, she was Everstead's future. But behind all that sparkle, I was seeing something no one else noticed. She was skimming off the top. Nothing major at first, just small, sneaky transfers, quiet enough to slip under the radar. But I was watching, and I kept records of everything. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed to be ready. Then out of nowhere, Dad got sick. Terminal. It hit us fast and hard. Toward the end, lying in that hospital bed, he said something that stuck with me. Maybe I was wrong about you. Then he dropped a bomb on me. He was leaving me 70% of Everstead. But there was a catch. I had to increase the company's value by 20%. If I didn't, it all went to Rachel. Here's the kicker. Rachel didn't know any of this. So I let her believe she'd already won. I handed her the keys to the penthouse, full access to the company accounts, the whole 9 yards. She started living it up like royalty. Meanwhile, I kept my head down, still playing the role of the janitor, still working the shadows. And that was just the beginning. Once Dad passed, everything moved in fast forward. Lawyers came in, paperwork flew, and the funeral went by in a blur. Rachel stood front and center like she was already queen. She gave tearful speeches, soaked up the press attention, and smiled like she'd just inherited the throne. I let her bask in it. I didn't say a word about the deal Dad had made with me. She settled into the penthouse like she was born for it. Got herself a custom Everstead credit card, started wearing designer outfits that probably cost more than my whole wardrobe. The board? They treated her like she ran the place. The media called her the face of the future. And me? I stayed invisible. Still clocking into accounting by day, still mopping floors as James Whittaker by night. Most folks didn't even give me a second glance. And if they did, they barely registered I existed. That's the thing about janitors. People look right past you. Which worked out perfectly for me. While Rachel was out partying on yachts, I was in the basement, not turning wrenches exactly, but cleaning up the messes no one else even noticed. I was getting a feel for the whole machine. Who actually kept things running? Who just played office politics? What systems were broken? Where the money was bleeding out? If I was going to grow this company, I knew I had to start at the foundation, not from some executive suite. So I started talking. Nothing flashy, just honest conversations with folks no one ever asked anything of. The guys in maintenance, the cafeteria team, the overnight staff. I listened, took mental notes. Some of what they shared, pure gold. One guy in IT mentioned this data system that kept crashing. I fixed it quietly using an open source tool I'd been learning about in my spare time. Never said a word about it. It saved the company thousands, and no one had any idea I was behind it. Another time, I realized two different departments were duplicating the same task in totally different ways. Total time sink. I wrote up a streamlined process, slipped it to a manager anonymously, and boom, efficiency shot up. Again, no credit. I didn't need it. I was stacking quiet wins. Meanwhile, Rachel was spiraling. She started bleeding money from the company left and right. Flashy consultants, first-class flights, client dinners that looked more like tropical vacations. And the worst part? She truly believed she was crushing it. But I'd been laying a trap. I built a fake business, gave it a name, set up accounts, fake invoices, the works. Then I planted it where I knew she'd find it. Made it look like a clever little loophole she could exploit. And sure enough, she bit. Started funneling company funds into it. Small amounts at first, then more. And I tracked every single transaction. I wasn't in a rush. The deal Dad left me was clear: grow the company's value by 20%. That was my mission. So I kept cleaning up the back end, cutting out waste, improving morale, making things run smoother. Little by little, Everstead started turning a corner. The numbers were climbing, slowly but surely. And Rachel? She had no clue I was the one making it happen. She still saw me as the same nobody I'd always been in her eyes. The brother who never pushed back, the one Dad overlooked, the guy stuck in accounting who barely made a ripple. Which was perfect. That's exactly what I wanted her to think. Until the time came to show her what I was really made of. 6 months in, and the company already felt different. Not from the outside. Rachel was still out there smiling for magazine covers, doing her little interviews, soaking up the attention. But behind the scenes, the place was shifting, quietly, steadily, like steering a massive ship in the dead of night. I was still burning the candle at both ends. Day job in accounting, graveyard shift cleaning floors, running on caffeine and sheer will. But I could feel it, the momentum building. And more importantly, I had a plan. I started building this private dashboard, nothing official, just a setup I pieced together on my own laptop late at night. It tracked every number I could get my hands on: productivity levels, cost efficiency, profit margins, employee turnover, you name it. I color-coded the trends, and slowly but surely, most of them were turning green. That 20% growth goal, I had it locked in my sights like it was the only thing keeping me going. Meanwhile, Rachel was sliding deeper into her mess. Her spending habits got even more out of control. It wasn't just that fake business anymore, she'd branched out. I found 3 new shell companies she was quietly funneling cash into. One billed Everstead for branding alignment workshops. Another claimed to offer strategic lifestyle consulting. Whatever that's supposed to mean. I tracked every cent. I had screenshots, archived emails, audio recordings. There was even this one dinner where she joked about her creative budgeting to one of the executives, and I caught the whole thing while emptying trash just a few feet away. She didn't even glance in my direction. That was the moment I knew I had her cold. But I wasn't ready to make my move. Not yet. I needed to hit that 20% mark first. Not just to fulfill the terms of the deal, but to prove to myself, and maybe even to Dad wherever he is, that I could do this. That I wasn't just sneaking around in the shadows playing some revenge game. So I kicked it into a higher gear. I started feeding ideas to a few middle managers, kept it anonymous, of course. I used burner email accounts to send them suggestions, better workflows, smarter hiring strategies, fresh training resources. Most of them thought the ideas came from some top-secret internal think tank or a pilot project from the higher-ups. Didn't matter to me. What mattered was that it worked. Everstead was getting sharper, more efficient. It felt like a real company again, not just a flashy brand with empty slogans. Then one afternoon, Tony, this guy from facilities I used to hang with during smoke breaks, even though I've never smoked a day in my life, said something that stuck with me. He goes, "You feel that? Like something's shifting around here. Like somebody finally gives a damn." That hit me hard, because I didn't just want Everstead to be more valuable. I wanted it to be something people were proud to be part of. Meanwhile, Rachel was living large. She was posting shots from her yacht in Mykonos. Took a trip to Dubai for what she called a leadership summit. But let's be real, it was a 5-star spa week. Her Instagram feed looked like a luxury travel brochure. Every caption was about personal branding, never about actual business performance. She thought she was invincible, but I was almost at the finish line. That night, I crunched the numbers again, sitting in my apartment, empty takeout box on the floor beside me, and for the first time in months, I smiled. We were up 19%, so close I could practically taste it. Just one more push. That was all I needed. One more little uptick, and everything would shift. I'd hit the 20%, and then it would all be mine. The company, the assets, a seat at the board. No more hiding behind mop buckets or crawling through boiler rooms. No more James Whittaker. Just me. Finally, I couldn't afford to screw this up. I must have gone over my numbers at least a dozen times. Just to be safe, I even paid a private analyst out of my own pocket to double-check everything. Through a third party, of course, so it wouldn't come back to me. They ran the full valuation report. Came back with the same result, a solid 19% increase in company value. Verified. Legit. Right there in black and white. All I needed now was one final push. Something clean. Concrete. Measurable. That's when I remembered a note I got a few weeks back. Brenda, one of the night crew, had mentioned this warehouse full of equipment no one had touched in years. Outdated tech, broken parts, unlogged inventory, just collecting dust. It was supposed to be written off ages ago, but somehow, nobody ever got around to filing the paperwork. It was forgotten. Buried. Nobody cared enough to fix it. But I realized, if I could clean that place up, sell off what still had value, and properly shut down the books on the rest, it could translate into real savings. I ran the math. Just correcting the asset records would tighten our financials. If we sold some of that inventory to smaller vendors, that could be the last 0.6% I needed. It wasn't flashy, but it was smart. So I made a move. I called in a few quiet favors, the kind you earn during late-night shifts when nobody else is around. Tony from facilities got me the access I needed. Brenda helped round up a few folks from the cleaning crew. We rolled up our sleeves and got to work. Nights, weekends, whatever it took. We took inventory, cleared out junk, scrubbed down every square foot of that place. And I kept track of every single dollar saved. When we were done, I submitted the updated records, anonymously, through a tip line to finance. Made it look like a junior accountant stumbled across a clerical oversight. That triggered a full internal review. They cleaned up the books and logged the asset changes. The result? Everstead's value jumped to 21%. That was it. I'd done it. I was sitting in my cramped apartment when the confirmation email came in from the analyst. I didn't even crack a smile. I just sat there in silence. I think I was too drained to feel anything. Or maybe I just couldn't believe it was real. But the job wasn't finished. I still had to expose what Rachel had been doing behind everyone's back. And that was going to be the real battle. Because even with all my evidence, even with the company turning around, people liked Rachel. She had charm, poise, knew how to talk to cameras and command a room. Nobody saw the manipulation behind the polish. So I spent the next few days getting everything in order. Every wire transfer, each phony invoice, the paper trail linking her personal bank accounts to those shell companies, audio recordings of her bragging about her tricks, photos from business trips that looked a whole lot more like vacations. I labeled everything, cross-referenced the files, sorted it by date, laid it all out so there wasn't a single hole to poke through. Then I set up a board meeting and invited Rachel. She didn't suspect a thing. Figured it was some run-of-the-mill strategy update or maybe a dry quarterly review. She walked into the room dressed like a walking ad for high-end ambition, $3,000 suit, heels sharp enough to cut glass. Took her seat like she owned the place. And then I stood up. That morning, When I stepped into that boardroom, I wasn't the janitor anymore. Wasn't hiding behind James Whitaker or pushing a mop through empty hallways. I was just Caleb again. Me. In a suit I hadn't worn in years, holding a flash drive loaded with everything I needed to blow the lid off her entire image. 7 board members sat around that long oak table. Some familiar faces, some new ones. All of them had been nodding along with Rachel for months, smiling politely every time she spoke. She settled into her chair at the head of the table, picture perfect, smiling that same calculated smile. "Morning, gentlemen," she said. Then, with a little smirk, and Caleb didn't even bother hiding the condescension. I didn't respond. Just walked over to the screen, plugged in the drive, and let the files load. The projector hummed to life behind me, and the first slide came up, a spreadsheet. Nothing fancy, just neat and straightforward. It laid out 8 years of steady progress, capped by the recent 21% spike in value. No one said a word. You could feel the shift in the room. Curious, maybe even a little impressed. Then I clicked to the next slide. Wire transfers. Dozens of them. Every single one accounted for. All connected to 3 fake companies. And all of them signed off by one person, Rachel Morgan. I watched her stiffen, just slightly, in her chair. She tried to keep her cool. "What is this?" she asked, voice smooth but tight. I didn't say a word. Just clicked again. Next came the screenshots, emails, receipts, internal sign-offs. Paper trails that went in only one direction. Then came the real gut punch, audio. Her voice filled the boardroom, light and casual, like it was just another night out. "It's not stealing if the money's already mine," she said with a laugh. "I just move it around creatively." You could have heard a pin drop. I turned to face the board. "For the past several years," I began, "I've been conducting a quiet, thorough investigation into internal fraud. I didn't come forward sooner because I needed to be certain. And now, I'm absolutely certain." The chairman leaned forward, studying me. "Why now? Why bring all this to us today?" "Because," I said, keeping my voice steady, "I've also fulfilled the condition my father left behind before he passed. He said if I could grow the value of the company by 20%, I'd inherit control. If I couldn't, it would all go to Rachel." Now they were listening, really listening. I glanced at Rachel. Her eyes were wide, locked on me like I was someone she couldn't quite place, like she was finally seeing me. Maybe for the first time. "You're lying," she said, sharp and desperate. "No," I replied, calm as ever. I stepped back from the table, letting the silence breathe. "This isn't about revenge," I said. "It's about doing what's right. It's about the future of Everstead. You can read the full report, or you can ask Rachel to explain herself. Either way, I'm done staying quiet." The boardroom was dead silent. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick folder. Stamped, sealed, the real deal. I laid it in front of the chairman and flipped it open to the page that mattered. "This," I said, tapping the paper, "is my father's final will. Signed, notarized, fully witnessed. It includes a clause that most of you have never seen. That's because it was sealed until the condition was met." I pointed to the section that spelled it all out. It clearly states, if I increased Everstead Group's value by at least 20%, I'd take over majority control, 70% of the company's shares, and full decision-making authority. If I failed, everything would automatically transfer to Rachel. It was his way of putting both of us to the test. A low murmur rolled through the room. Confusion, shock, maybe a few dawning realizations. "I never told anyone about the clause," I continued, "because I didn't want special treatment. I didn't want the board to start seeing me through a different lens. I wanted to earn this, not be handed it. And while I was down in the trenches doing the work," I paused, looking Rachel in the eye. She was stealing from the company. Rachel opened her mouth like she was going to fire back, but nothing came out. Her face had drained of color. "Everything you need is here," I said, keeping my voice steady. "The numbers, the proof, the will. What happens next is up to you." The board chair let out a slow breath and glanced around the table. "We'll need a few minutes alone." Rachel didn't look my way as I turned and left the room. Out in the hallway, I paced the same short stretch of floor, just looping quietly past the frosted boardroom windows. My heart wasn't racing anymore. I felt strangely calm, not triumphant, just tired. Like my body finally got the message that the fight was almost done. Then the boardroom door creaked open. The chair stepped out first, followed by the rest. They passed me one by one, silent, their faces impossible to read. But none of them looked angry, and that, to me, was a good sign. Rachel came out last. She didn't speak, just walked past stiffly, her heels striking the tile like little gunshots. "Rachel," I called out. She stopped, but didn't turn around. "You can still leave with some dignity." She let out a short, dry laugh. "Don't act like this isn't about revenge." "It's not," I said. "It's about accountability. You made your choices. Now you live with what comes next." She finally turned and faced me. Her eyes looked wet, but her expression stayed sharp. "So that's it. You're the boss now? What? You gonna make me mop floors?" "No," I said. "But you're not the boss anymore either. And you won't go to prison if you play this smart." Her gaze narrowed. "The board's giving you an option," I told her. "You resign. Right now. Walk away from the company, from the shares, from the spotlight. You get to keep the house in Wellington. You get to stay free. But this chapter? It's over. Permanently. And if I say no, there's more than enough here to destroy you," I said. "You know it. I know it. And now the board knows it too." We stood in silence for a moment. Just the two of us. The weight of everything between us sitting heavy in the air. Then, without another word, she turned and walked toward the elevators. I didn't follow. A few hours later, an internal company memo went out. "Rachel Morgan has officially stepped down from Everstead Group, citing personal reasons." And just like that, the golden child was gone. The press did what they always do. Polished the story, cleaned it up with soft headlines. "Leadership transition at Everstead. Morgan family legacy enters new era." No one outside the walls knew the truth. Not yet, anyway. But I didn't care. I hadn't done any of this for attention. This was about rebuilding from the ground up. That night, I sat alone in what used to be the executive office, now mine, looking out over the skyline. The city lights blinked back at me through the glass. And for the first time since all this began, I didn't feel like I was faking it. I was here, and I'd earned it. But still, something felt off. Because even though I'd won, even though I'd taken back the company, exposed the fraud, and done what needed to be done, it didn't feel like a victory. Not really. It didn't feel like the end of something. It felt like the start of something way tougher. The very first thing I did as CEO, I canceled the champagne order. Apparently, someone in PR had already planned this big celebration reception for my promotion, fancy finger foods, a jazz trio, gift bags with the Everstead logo. I shut it all down. Didn't sit right with me. There wasn't anything to celebrate yet. Not in my book. Instead, I called a meeting, not with the board, not with upper management, but with the people who actually kept this place running after hours. The night crew, the janitors, the cafeteria staff, security guys, maintenance workers. Folks like Brenda and Tony. The same people who helped me clear out that dusty old warehouse. The ones who never got credit but always got the job done. I brought real pizza. Greasy, cheesy, cardboard box pizza. Not the vegan, gluten-free, designer slices Rachel used to order for her networking mixers. We sat together in the break room, the same one I used to mop up every night, and I laid it all out for them. I told them the truth. I told them I used to be one of them. At first, nobody bought it. A couple of them chuckled like I was telling a joke. Then Brenda leaned in, squinting real close, and said, "Wait, James." The look on her face was something I'll never forget. I told them everything about the fake identity, the fraud, the will, the 20% growth clause. Why I kept quiet. Why I was standing in front of them now, not with a mop, but with the keys to the whole company. And then I told them what came next. "We're going to fix this place," I said. "Not from the top down, from the inside out. You're not just janitors or cafeteria workers or guards. You're the foundation, and I want you to help me rebuild this company." They stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Then Tony spoke up, brow raised. "You serious?" "Dead serious," I said. The next few weeks were pure chaos, but in the best way. I started with wages. Bumped the minimum pay across Everstead to $30 an hour. Effective immediately. No red tape. No PR spin. Just action. Of course, a few of the execs had a meltdown, especially the ones who'd been padding their bonuses for years. But they couldn't argue with what happened next. Retention improved. Productivity jumped. People stopped calling in sick just to avoid showing up. Morale didn't just go up. It exploded. I axed half the luxury fluff from the C-suite. All the perks no one really needed, and rerouted that money straight into employee benefits. We rolled out better health coverage, more flexible schedules, job training programs, even free counseling services. People started showing up early. They smiled more, talked to each other like human beings again. It felt strange, but in a good way. Then, out of the blue, I got an email from Rachel. No subject, just a 5-word message. We need to talk. I didn't reply, not right away, but 2 days later, she showed up, right there in the Everstead lobby. No makeup, no flashy clothes, just jeans, a hoodie, and a look on her face I'd never seen before. She didn't storm in, didn't name drop, didn't demand anything. She just sat quietly in one of the waiting chairs and waited. She stayed there for over an hour. Calm, still, just waiting like a regular person. Eventually, I walked down to meet her. When she saw me, she stood up. "I'm not here to argue," she said. "I'm here because I honestly don't know who I am anymore." I didn't say a word, just listened. "I lost everything," she said, her voice softer now. "But I still remember what it felt like when we were little, when Mom made grilled cheese and played the Beatles in the kitchen, before everything got messed up." I nodded slowly. "So tell me, why are you really here?" She looked me straight in the eye. No games, no mask. "I want to start over," she said. I didn't say yes. Not right away. When Rachel asked if she could start over, part of me wanted to laugh in her face. Another part wanted to yell, or just walk away and be done with it. But instead, I told her the truth. "You're not coming back as an executive, not as a partner, not even as regular staff." She gave a small nod, like she already knew that was coming. "Then what?" she asked quietly. I paused, really thought about it, and said something I hadn't planned. "You can come back as a janitor." Her eyes widened. She opened her mouth, then shut it again. "You're kidding, right?" "Nope." She looked at me like I'd slapped her. "You want to humiliate me?" "No. I want you to understand what this place actually is. What it means to be down at the bottom. To see it like I did." She didn't respond, just stared at the floor in silence. "You don't have to do it," I added. "You've still got your house in Wellington. You could move to California, start over somewhere else. But if you want any part of Everstead again, this is the only way." She left without saying another word. Honestly, I figured that was it. End of the road. But then Monday rolled around, and there she was, 6 a.m. sharp, standing at the back entrance in gray coveralls, hair pulled back, no makeup. I handed her a badge. It read, "Rachel, Facilities Crew." And just like that, she was back, but not as the person she used to be. Those first few weeks were brutal. She hated it. The early hours, the stink, the way people looked at her, especially the ones who recognized her from the old days. Some whispered, some rolled their eyes. A few just turned and walked the other way. She never said it out loud, but I could see it wearing her down. About a month in, I found her in the supply closet, sitting on an overturned bucket, tears running down her cheeks. "I can't do this," she whispered. "I feel invisible." I crouched beside her and said, "Good. That's how most folks here feel every single day." She wiped her face, didn't say a word, just stood up and got back to work. But after that, something changed. She stopped reacting when people ignored her, started remembering names, made small jokes with the crew. I watched her begin to take pride in polished floors and gleaming windows. One night, I caught her staying late to help a new guy who was struggling to finish up. No audience, no credit, just heart. And the truth is, she got good at it. She never used our last name, never told anyone who she used to be. And over time, the team welcomed her in. Not as the ex-CEO, not as my sister, just as Rachel. 7 months in, her supervisor, a guy who'd never even met her during the Rachel Morgan days, pulled me aside. He said, "Hey, this Rachel girl on night shift? She's solid, always shows up, gets things done, real respectful. You should keep an eye on her, leadership material." He had no clue who she really was, and I didn't tell him. Meanwhile, Everstead kept growing. We launched a profit-sharing program. Every employee got a cut of our success. We expanded our affordable housing support for staff, started a scholarship fund for the kids of employees. Applications rolled in by the dozen. One of the scholarship branding proposals came from Rachel. It wasn't flashy, just clean, thoughtful, and quietly powerful. She'd stayed up all night working on it. "I don't want my name on it," she told me. "I just want it to matter." And for the first time since we were kids, I believed her without hesitation. If you'd told me 2 years ago that I'd be sitting in a break room eating lunch next to my sister, Both of us in work uniforms. I would have laughed. But now, that was just a regular Tuesday. Rachel still worked the night shift. Said she preferred it, fewer distractions, more real work. She'd become a crew leader by then, running her team with structure and calm authority. The people she supervised respected her. None of them knew about her past, and I saw no reason to change that. She wasn't chasing recognition anymore. One afternoon, she knocked on my office door holding a beat-up cardboard box. "I found this in one of the storage closets," she said. "Thought you might want to see it." I lifted the lid. Inside were photos, dozens of them, from when we were kids. Christmas mornings. Us playing in the sprinkler out back. Mom holding us at the beach. I hadn't seen these in years. I'd almost forgotten what we looked like before everything got complicated, when we were just happy. Rachel picked up one of the pictures. "Remember this?" she asked, holding up a photo of us building a Lego city in the living room. Mom was in the background, laughing. "You cried when I knocked your tower over," she said with a little grin. "You knocked it over on purpose," I said. She smiled. "Yeah, I did." We sat there for a while, not saying much, just flipping through memories like they were something delicate we didn't want to break. Then, after a long pause, she said, "You know, we're not just the story of Everstead." "I know," I said softly. That moment stuck with me, because she was right. This whole thing, the business, the inheritance, the battle, it started out feeling like a fight over legacy. But what we were building now, it wasn't about clinging to what came before. It was about creating something entirely new. That same week, I got a call from a guidance counselor at the local high school. One of the students who had applied for our scholarship, a kid named Devin, had submitted an application so strong, they wanted me to meet him in person. When he stepped into my office, I recognized the last name on his file immediately. His mom had been cleaning our offices for 13 years. "I want to be an architect," he told me, nervously but proud. "My mom said you used to carry around books about buildings when you were little. Is that true?" I smiled. "It is." Devin got the scholarship. Full ride. He wasn't the first we'd helped, and he wouldn't be the last. But something about him, his story, his drive, made me feel like we were finally building something that might outlive both of us. Later that night, Rachel stopped by my apartment with more photos. She didn't say much, just handed over the stack and helped me pick out a few to frame for the new employee hallway we were putting together at HQ. One of the pictures she brought? It was of Dad. Rachel stared at the photo for a long while. Then she said, almost in a whisper, "He taught us what not to become." I nodded, and we figured out the rest on our own. 1 year after Rachel rejoined Everstead, this time starting from the bottom, the company looked almost nothing like the one we'd inherited. And I mean that in the best possible way. Turnover had dropped to record lows. Profit margins were strong. But more than the numbers, people actually liked working here. They felt noticed, respected. That meant more to me than any profit report ever could. That year, we launched 3 major programs: an affordable housing initiative, a scholarship fund, and a community-driven architecture project. The third one, that was Rachel's idea. She said, "What if we gave kids the chance to design the neighborhoods they live in? Maybe they'd actually feel like they belong there." I didn't argue. I just nodded and let her run with it. That program ended up becoming a cornerstone of everything we were building. We started running workshops, partnering with schools. We brought in architects, city planners, even local contractors to act as mentors. Suddenly, kids who'd never left their block were standing in front of CEOs, presenting blueprints for real projects. It was incredible, and it felt right. But the more good we did, the more eyes we drew. And not all of them were friendly. Investors started calling, their voices polite but cautious. "We're impressed by the growth," they'd say. "But this community focus, it's not exactly scalable." One of them even had the nerve to say we were leaving money on the table by being too ethical. I told him he was welcome to invest somewhere else. He didn't take that well. Some members of the board began to stir too. Subtle comments, carefully worded concerns. Shouldn't we stay focused on core operations? Are we sure housing is really within our scope? They didn't say it directly, but the message was loud and clear. The feel-good era was over. Time to get back to being a real company. I wasn't buying it. One afternoon, I brought it up while Rachel and I were walking past the construction site of one of the new community centers. "You think I'm pushing this too far?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, you're pushing in the right direction. They're just taking their time catching up." Then she stopped, looking out at the unfinished building in front of us. "When this is done," she said, 100 families will have access to healthcare, tutoring, childcare. That's not a vanity project. That's infrastructure. That's how we build stronger lives and a stronger company." I looked at her for a moment. "You know," I said, "sometimes you sound a lot like Mom." She blinked, didn't answer right away. Then she said softly, "I wish she could have seen all this." "Yeah," I said. "Me too." That night, I sat down and wrote a new mission statement for Everstead. It wasn't long or flashy, just 5 simple words. Build people, build the future. We printed it on the back of every employee badge the next month. No one questioned it, because by that point, they didn't need convincing. They believed in it too. If someone had told me 3 years ago that I'd be sitting around a boardroom table with a former night guard, a janitor, and a scholarship kid, all helping draft company policy, I would have said they were crazy. But that's exactly where we were. Tony, the guy who used to patrol the parking lot on graveyard shifts, was now head of security, and he ran things tight. His department was respectful, modern, and efficient. No more intimidation. No more red tape. Just trust and responsibility. Brenda, the same woman who helped me dig through that forgotten warehouse back when all this started, was now our director of facilities. She had a mind for structure, scheduling, repairs, logistics. She ran the department like a seasoned general. Everything clicked under her watch, and people respected her for it. Not just because she got things done, but because she treated everyone with dignity. And Devin, our scholarship kid, was now halfway through his architecture degree. He'd already started working part-time with our urban design team. His most recent idea? A modular system for community libraries. It was turning heads. The board asked him who his mentor was. He pointed to Rachel. What we were doing wasn't just about running a business anymore. We were creating something deeper, a culture built on trust, effort, and shared ownership. Naturally, not everyone was on board. One senior executive, a guy who'd been around since the early days with my father, sent me a memo. The subject line read, "Concerns about organizational drift." He threw around terms like mission creep and erosion of traditional hierarchy. So I called him into my office. "Let me ask you something," I said. "How many people on the janitorial team do you know by name?" He looked confused. "Why does that matter?" "It matters," I told him, "because they know your name. And if that doesn't mean anything to you, then maybe you're not the right fit for where this company is headed." He handed in his resignation a week later. We didn't replace him with another suit. We promoted someone from our HR department, a woman who had spent the last 2 years focused on equity training, employee well-being, and making Everstead a safer, fairer place to work. She believed in the mission. That was what counted. Eventually, the outside world started paying attention. A local business journal ran a story titled, "From Scandal to Social Impact, the Unlikely Rebirth of Everstead Group." It caught fire. Bigger outlets picked it up. And for once, the headlines weren't about Rachel's fashion sense or Dad's legacy. They were about what we'd built. A different kind of company. At our next all-hands meeting, I stood on the same stage where Rachel used to give those slick, vision speeches with the scripted slides and applause lines. But I didn't talk about numbers or market trends. I talked about people. I talked about Tony, who used to walk the night shift and now ran security with empathy and strength. About Brenda, who turned an overlooked department into one of our most respected teams. About Devin, a kid whose mom used to clean our offices and who now helped design the communities we served. I talked about being underestimated. "I know this company was built on power," I told the crowd. "But the way we grow now, that comes from people." Rachel stood off to the side, arms folded, watching me with a look I couldn't quite read. Later that day, she walked up beside me and said, "You're turning this place into something I almost believe in." I gave her a half smile. "Almost." She smirked. "Ask me again in a year." Because with growth, real growth, there's always friction. Not the bad kind of friction. Not the kind that comes from greed or power plays, but the kind that shows up when you're actually building something that matters. Quickly, from the ground up. We were scaling. Fast. New community centers. Affordable housing projects. Partnership proposals coming in from nonprofits, universities, even city governments. What had started as one small pilot had grown into 5 full-blown initiatives in under a year. And for the first time since I took over, I felt it, that creeping sense of being overwhelmed. We were doing good work. Important work. But the speed? It was punishing. Meetings stretched late into the night. My inbox turned into a mountain. Some nights, I didn't even go home. Just crashed on the office couch for a few hours and kept going. I kept telling myself it was worth it. And it was, but I couldn't ignore the truth. Something was slipping, and I didn't want to turn into the thing I had fought so hard to undo. One morning, Rachel walked into my office holding a coffee and wearing a look I hadn't seen from her in a long time. Actual concern. "You've been here 3 nights straight," she said, setting the cup down. "You look like hell." "Appreciate that," I muttered, half smiling. She sat across from me and leaned in. "Caleb, you can't carry this whole thing on your back." I rubbed my eyes. "If we slow down now, we lose momentum. If you burn out," she said gently, "we lose you." I didn't have a clever comeback. She was right, and we both knew it. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a thick binder. Inside was a proposal titled, "People First Leadership Framework." It was a decentralized management plan, focused on training team-level leaders to step up, make decisions, and own their part of the mission. Less micromanagement. More trust. I flipped through it slowly. "This is solid." She gave me that familiar raised eyebrow. "I know." We rolled it out within a month. And the impact? Better than I'd hoped. It didn't just cut my workload in half. It gave people real ownership over their roles. Managers stopped waiting for orders and started making smart, confident decisions. Teams felt more connected, more empowered. And for the first time in a long time, I had space to breathe again. More than anything, I finally had time to zoom out, to see the bigger picture. One evening, I went for a walk through our newest Everstead project, a community garden tucked behind one of the affordable housing buildings we'd helped develop. The sun was just starting to dip, casting everything in that soft, golden light. A couple of kids were kneeling in the dirt, planting tomatoes. A volunteer was showing an older couple how to work the compost bins. It was quiet, peaceful. I stood there for a while, just watching. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I smiled. Not the forced, professional smile I used in meetings. A real one. Rachel joined me a few minutes later. She didn't say anything right away. We just stood side by side, taking it in. Then she said, "You've changed." I glanced at her. "So have you." She gave a small nod. "Do you ever wonder if Mom would be proud?" I looked out at the garden, at the people, the laughter, the life we had helped grow from the dirt up. "Yeah," I said. "But more than that, I think she'd feel seen." Exactly 2 years after I stepped in as CEO of Everstead, we hosted our very first company-wide scholarship ceremony. We rented out this old community theater, the kind with creaky red seats, fading paint on the walls, and a stage that smelled like popcorn and dust. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt real, honest, like us. The place was packed. Employees, families, students, a few folks from the press. No high-powered investors. No suits. Just people, the ones who helped build this thing, and the ones whose lives had changed because of it. I stood backstage, holding the final list in my hands. 50 scholarships, 50 names, 50 stories. Some of the names I recognized. Kids whose parents had cleaned our offices. Teens who'd worked summer shifts in the mailroom. One girl, Maya, wrote in her application that her family hadn't had real beds until they got into Everstead's housing program. Now, she wanted to study architecture. That one hit me deep. Rachel walked over holding a clipboard. She looked calm, steady. "You ready?" she asked. I took a breath. "Not really. But that's never stopped me before." She smirked. "They're gonna love it." The house lights dimmed. The music came up. Someone introduced me as CEO Caleb Morgan. And for once, that title didn't feel like a mask I was wearing. I stepped onto the stage to a round of applause. Genuine, heartfelt. I kept it short. "I used to think legacy was something you inherited," I said. "Now I know, legacy is what you build, not what you're given." Then we started calling names. One by one, 50 students came up to the stage. There were hugs, laughter, a few tears. At one point, a boy jumped off the stage and high-fived the janitor who used to sneak him candy after school. That janitor? He's a department supervisor now. Rachel didn't speak on stage that night. She didn't need to. Later, I found her standing near the reception window, quietly staring out at the street. She had a glass of punch in one hand and this faraway look in her eyes. "Penny for your thoughts?" I asked. She turned slowly, smiled faintly. "I used to think being a Morgan meant winning. And now, Now I think it means making space for other people to win, too. She set the glass down on the table and looked me in the eye. Thanks, she said, for not giving up on me, even when I probably deserved it. I didn't say anything right away, just nodded, because in that moment, I knew she truly understood. This was never about revenge, or putting her in her place, or even proving who was right. It was about starting over the right way, together. We didn't throw a big celebration for the 2-year anniversary of Eversted's rebirth. Instead, we opened a building. It wasn't a shiny new headquarters. Nothing grand or flashy. Just a modest, 3-story, multi-use center right in the heart of a neighborhood we used to overlook. Inside were free tutoring spaces, basic health services, job training labs, and even a rooftop garden. We called it the Morgan Center. Not for our father, for our mother. Because she saw people, Rachel told someone when they asked. The opening was low-key, small and intentional. No balloons, no streamers, just stories. One by one, folks stepped forward to share what Eversted's programs had meant to them. A woman who once worked night shifts in our laundry department talked about earning her GED through our education initiative. A teenage boy, one of Devon's interns, shared his dream of designing safer, smarter public housing. And Devon? He was standing right there beside Rachel, presenting a model for our next big project, a community-designed park system that would connect 6 underserved neighborhoods. His hands trembled a bit, but when he spoke, his voice was steady. I used to think people like me didn't belong in places like this, he said. Now I believe people like me should be building them. That earned him a standing ovation. After the ceremony, I took a quiet walk through the new building. Eventually, I found myself standing in front of a mural we'd had painted on one of the main walls. It showed Eversted's evolution, from a cold tower of glass and steel to something warmer, more human. A bridge made of hands and homes, stretching outward. Right at the center was a quote, painted in Mom's handwriting, a line she once scribbled in a card she gave me as a kid. Build what you'd want to walk into. Rachel came up beside me. You did good, she said softly. I shook my head. We did good. She smiled, then asked, do you think he'd be proud? I paused for a moment, then answered, maybe, but honestly, I don't think that matters anymore. She raised an eyebrow, surprised. I'm not building this for him, I said. I'm building it for the people he never noticed. The ones we used to overlook. We stood there for a while, watching families explore the space. Kids running up the stairs. Volunteers setting up classrooms. It felt real, like something that might actually last. Later that night, we were back at the office, staying late to go over the budget for next year's projects. No arguments. No egos. Just coffee cups, notepads, spreadsheets, and 2 people fully focused on the same goal. And somewhere in that moment, between line items and shared silence, it hit me. This wasn't just a company anymore. It was a movement. The end of the year snuck up on us. We'd grown again. 3 new centers. 6 new community partnerships. Dozens of lives touched, many in ways we'd never fully understand. We couldn't measure everything, but we tracked what mattered most. Not just the profits, but trust, stability, pride. And for the first time I could remember, Eversted wasn't just surviving. It was leading. And this time, the celebration, it felt earned. We held the holiday party in the same old warehouse Rachel once used to run fake invoices. Yeah, poetic, right? It had been completely renovated by then, turned into a bright, open event space lined with artwork from our scholarship students and design interns. What used to be a place of secrecy was now filled with light and color and people who mattered. The food? All cooked by local vendors we'd partnered with throughout the year. There weren't any spotlights. No red carpet. Just real people. Laughing. Sharing. As I wandered through the crowd, I caught glimpses of something that still felt surreal. Folks from every part of Eversted mixing like old friends. Tony dancing with his wife. Brenda showing someone how to 2-step in the corner. Devon had brought his mom. She cried 3 different times before dessert. Toward the end of the night, someone handed me a glass of cider and nudged me forward. Speech, they said. I hadn't prepared one, but I walked up anyway. Hey everyone. I started, holding the glass. I'll keep it quick. The room quieted. I used to think inheritance was just about money and buildings. But standing here tonight, seeing all of you, I think it's something else entirely. I glanced over at Rachel. She gave me a quiet nod. Inheritance, I continued, is about building something together. Something worth handing down. Not because it's expensive or impressive, but because it means something. I raised my glass. To the people who used to feel invisible and who made this place seen. Someone called out. To Caleb. I smiled and shook my head. No, I said. To all of us. Glasses clinked across the room. Then, Rachel stepped forward, her glass in hand. To our father, she said. For showing us exactly who not to be. That got a few chuckles and a few thoughtful nods. And to us, I added, for figuring it out just in time. Later that night, the two of us stood out on the balcony, looking out over the city skyline. Think we've done enough? Rachel asked. Not even close, I said. We raised our glasses again, clinked them softly. Because in the end, legacy isn't about what you're handed. It's about what you decide to build, and who you choose to build it with.